Hello everyone, it's Oni Onyabor and I'm with Prolific Writing, Better Living Through Creative Expression. And today we want to talk about all you need is love, but not really, and the real reason you're not getting more done with your art and your creativity. Now, I think one of the biggest things a lot of people forget when it comes to creativity, and specifically when you're trying to find art to tell and express yourself with, is its own nature, right? The nature of creativity is something is not existent and needs to be brought into the material universe, right? So that means at its core, fundament, its foundation, whatever it is that you're trying to express, it does not exist yet. It might exist in some form because, as we know, nothing can be created nor destroyed. So all creation, in effect, is really just more expressed or exquisite organization. And the reality is you're taking pieces that already exist and bringing something which is unique, which does not exist in terms of the temporal reality, to light. So if you understand that, you understand that creativity, regardless of whether you want to call it God, whether you want to call it, the universe, fundamentally exists in a place beyond your physical space and exists where whatever that thing is, whether it's God, whether it's the universe, whether it's source, exists there. I call it source and I believe in God, right? They're kind of different things for me. But ultimately, it's that my creativity exists in a space beyond me. And that if I don't tap into that place beyond me, I'm not going to be able to effectively bring it down. So it's ultimately seeing and understanding myself, not the source of my own creativity, but just a conduit of it. Just as a light bulb is a conduit for the electricity that comes into it. And then when that electricity interacts with the light bulb, it expresses that electric potential through light, and it illuminates it. But that can be different, say, for a computer, or say, a laptop, which is a computer. Oh my gosh, I need to be more creative. But just the idea of, say, a power drill, right? Or say, an electric car. You put electricity, which is essentially like source energy, which I believe is ultimately expressions of love, expressions of hope, and ultimately faith being pushed through you, which is the conduit. And then that expression comes out in different ways. So for an electric car, it's getting one person from point A to point B, right? For a power drill, it's from, moving up and down and drilling back and forth so you can do whatever tool. And that's ultimately like art. So it's whether or not someone's being a painter, whether or not someone's a basketball player, whether or not someone tells stories. Ultimately, you are just a conduit for that ultimate imagination, that ultimate source, that creative energy, which is going to be abound in you when you are feeling things like love. And that's why we say all you need is love, because that is the biggest extension, the biggest indicator that you are in fact in line with that creative line. You are in fact in that creative frequency. You are in a place where you can create and express it. But it's not the only thing that's necessary, right? Because now that we have love, just like anything else, right? You can have electricity. You can have a power outlet in the wall. You can have, a lightning bolt hit a rod, and all that electricity is going to go through and go right to the ground. But if there's not anything in between that can transmute that energy into something useful, well, then you haven't really expressed anything, right? You haven't really created anything. So just like invariably, thunderstorms will pass, the sun will rise and set. So will your creative spurts, especially if you're not using it. So it's only in capturing that creative essence and then effectively expressing it that we can find ways to continually build and have life reflect that expression, right? So a good example is, at first electricity was completely unharnessed, Benjamin Franklin was setting his kite up in the sky, got struck by lightning, zippity zap zap. But ultimately, it wasn't until people built inventions around that, Thomas Edison making the light bulb, what was his name that made the television? Farnsworth, Farnsworth, who meant the television, right? and guys who went the Alexander Graham Bell making the telephone. It wasn't until people found different ways to express this potential energy that we were able to make anything of it. So as the artist, you have the responsibility not only to make sure you're a conduit to source, right, so that you're always getting in that loving energy, but then through your labor of love, there are the other elements outside of love that you need to cultivate. Now, before we talk about specifically what those are and how to do that, if you found what I've said useful, please like and subscribe on this video. It makes a massive difference in helping me spread the message to as many people as possible, as well as don't hesitate to share this with someone who might need to hear these words. It's what I do, it's what I love to do, and so I'm just trying to get that out to as many people as possible. Now, the last step, talking about infrastructure and how to take that love that we have and find an effective means of expression, right? Because it's one thing to have an ability or to have an idea of something, but then how do we effectively express it, right? Because we live in a mortal frame. Now, I might have an idea of something I want to see in my mind, say like a girl riding on a bicycle, right? And I say I want to write or create this image and be able to bring what is in my mind, right, what is being transmuted from source out into the temporal world. Now, there's a lot of ways to do that. I could get a little girl and have her sit on the bicycle and take a picture of that, right? That's one way I could create that image. I could learn how to draw with a pencil or with pastels and learn how to do that. Or I could sit down and write a book and make a poem about the girl riding on her bike, majestic through the wind, da-da-da-da-da, right? And through this, I've been able to create this image. Even you speaking and hearing this from my mouth, you guys are hearing this and you're feeling the image in your head. You might not exactly see the same image I do, but already the creations, the seeds of that image are beginning to be created. That is because right now, through the medium of this camera and me talking to you guys, I'm expressing myself. And that's ultimately what we're talking about. We're talking about through these different means and these different modes, we express and create this image, right? And then from that image, it begins to grow and grow and grow until eventually it manifests into the reality. And so that's what we need to do. So a lot of that starts with, what are some of the key things that you need to do? A lot of that is building an infrastructure in your life. Now, I talked earlier in a video called Creativity, the Source of Wealth, how your creativity is like black gold. It's like oil, right? And it's the source of all the wealth, everything that's creating your dream life. But just like that oil, it can spray up in the air, but if there's no infrastructure to utilize it, it's not any good. So what does that structure look like? What is the oil rig? What is the infrastructure? What is the oil bills? What is the refinery that takes that oil into something that's usable, right? So that we can transmute it into these other things. Just like your creativity. You want to take your creativity, this sense, this tapping in of source that you've now done the work of because you're worked to stay in alignment with God, which is the first and most important step, is making sure that you're in alignment with whatever that higher source is, whether it's God, the universe, whatever. Your muse, whatever allows you to tap into that creative source, making sure you're always staying in alignment with that and doing the things that you personally know you need to do. But now, how do we take, now that we're in alignment and we have that oil flowing, how do we turn it into something useful? And this is where basically consecrating yourself to your to a specific means of transmuting that, which is basically to say consecrate yourself to a craft, right? If you know you want to become a writer, then read stuff from other writers and write a lot. If you want to become an artist, you need to do art a lot. And you say, well, what is the block? Like, it's like, well, I can't just write. And it's like, well, if you are tapped into source, right, which is the first step, making sure you have alignment with that, making sure that you feel that love, making sure that you're moving into a sense, into a space where you're tapped into that. And that's all an individual journey. We all have to do what we can to find alignment. But then after that, it's simply deciding on whatever medium it is. Decide for 30 days, 1 month, a year, whatever it is, and simply doing that thing a lot. And then eventually, let's say I want to draw that girl in my head, and I said, okay, I want to make it perfectly like I see it in my head. I just draw a lot, and I draw a lot, and then eventually, it doesn't quite look like how I want it to, but I keep practicing. And then through that consecration of my craft, I'll get better and closer to the source. Now that might sound like that's obvious, right? But it's understanding that there's no other way around it. Like, you can be tapped in, and if you're aligned, naturally the consecration to a craft is going to come easier. A lot of times we're trying to write or we're trying to draw, but we don't have, it's like putting in an oil rig where there's no oil because there's nothing there. And it's because we have to find that source. We have to go to where the oil is. And so if you're struggling to find where your creativity is, it's because you've gotten away from love, and that's what you need. Right now you need to find whatever that source of love is to help you find that realignment. Then afterwards, the craft comes. The craft comes afterwards, not before. And then when you have that alignment, then it'll just come naturally, right? It's really about allowing yourself and not really forcing yourself to write or to draw or whatever you need to do. It's just putting yourself in alignment with that, and then little by little, the craft of it will come together. And eventually, it'll transform your whole life, just like oil industry transformed human reality as we know it. Now, if you found that helpful and that's making sense, I ask that you please, again, like and subscribe and share this with someone who'd like to hear it. Also recognize this video is sponsored by Pro-Lit-Fic Writing. I'm a writing coach, and I help people who are struggling with learning how to focus on their craft, specifically in the means of writing. I'm helping people with that right now, so if you're interested in that, comment down below, as well as reach out to me with my social medias. Follow me on Instagram, and just feel free to get in touch with me. I would love to help you out with that. Again, remember, the first step is to find alignment with love and what you like to do, and then after that, consecrate yourself to the craft. And then after you do that, the rest will take care of itself. So, guys, thanks so much for following, liking, subscribing, and sharing, as well as coming and listening so far. Take care, and have a good day. Stay happy, stay healthy. Peace.